Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
Welcome back to the Outlaw Lawyers. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, and Cassandra Nicholas, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, where you can find them. Josh and Joe, managing partners of the firm. They're practicing attorneys here in North Carolina, as is Cassandra Nicholas. It's always about the legalese. We talk the topics. You're going to have questions about your own situation. You can always get in touch with the firm, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186, and leave your contact information, briefly what the call's about. And an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And again, conveniently located offices, Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, and Gastonia. Check out the website, theoutlawlawyer.com. So listener questions. First one up, Josh, is what is a condo? How is it created?
So I was having a conversation with a client, and it was a consult about some legal issues with renting out portions of a piece of real property. So, we got land, we got a house, a big house. And so we were talking about how to make the best use of it, how to minimize liability from his perspective. And we got into this situation, and the question that he asked is, well, what if I turn this house into condos? And so that was an interesting question. I don't think it's the right fit for the gentleman who was asking me. But so condos are relatively new in Raleigh. If you're from New York, if you're from Chicago, if you're from a bigger city, condos have been around for a long time because you don't have a lot of space. You got to maximize space. People want to own things. But I thought before we even get to that question, we kind of have to think about how we view real property. And so the example that I was going to use in my mind here, and Cassandra and Joe might have a better example, but I was going to say, okay, let's say you have a 10-acre tract of land. You say you've inherited it or you came across it, but you got a 10-acre tract of land, and that's where your principal residence, you build your house on it. And let's just say over the years, you have maybe you have some relatives who put a trailer on there, affixed it to the property, made it real property. Maybe someone built a house in the back side of the 10 acres. You've got some barns, you've got some out parcels. And so now you got this 10-acre tract with all these different buildings on them, possibly different principal residences. Well, according to the way the law looks at it, that's all that together. Maybe there's 3 houses, maybe there's a trailer, maybe there's a barn. That's all one piece of property, right? So if you decide you want to go sell the house on the backside, you can't just sell the house on the backside because as it stands now, you haven't separated the property into parcels. You haven't done anything to it's just a 10-acre. And so we've seen that before where someone's trying to sell maybe one house or one, something like that. And we were like, well, you can't do that. You'd have to get a surveyor out there to draw up a plat and kind of separate the 10 acres. Maybe you're separating it into, a couple of 2-acre lots, and then you can sell once you've separated it, had the county approve it. Now you've created where there was one big 10-acre parcel. Now you've created, let's say, 5 2-acre parcels. And so you can then sell off those 2-acre parcels. But real property is everything on that real property, everything affixed, everything built. So that's this guy. We'll say that's the guy we're creating here for this question. Let's say that's his problem. He's got 3 houses on this one 10-acre parcel. His tax bill is for the one parcel. He's never had it split up. He's never had it surveyed, and he wants to rent out some of the houses on here, but he wants to shield himself from liability. And so a condo is not land. Right? A condo is when you decide and you there's a statute that tells you how to do it. You have to get approval. There's things you have to do. But a condo is where you make one room, right? Think of an apartment building. That apartment building with like 20 apartments in it. That's one piece of real property. That there's one tax bill. That's one thing. Even though there may be 20 units with 40 people living in all 20 units, that's one piece of real property. But if you decide to make that condos, then what you're doing is you're selling that. This is what I always say.
It's air, right?
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it. A condo is just air.
It's just the air. Let's say
the joint interest in the common areas.
That's right. So when you create a condo, you would say, the driveway, getting to the building, the parking lot, the pool, whatever you got, you've got a 1/20th interest in the common area, and then you own unit 1A. But you only own from like the drywall and the flooring in, right? So when you buy a condo, that's what you're doing. You're buying that air, the right to get to that air, the right to be in that air. And then the condo, if it's put together right, there's provisions there where if something happens and it burns down, the condo association should have insurance and reserves, and they should build it back. But you don't own the bricks and the roof and the real property underneath. In theory, the condo association does. And so I think for a lot of North Carolinians who were born and raised here, that is a new concept. I mean, we know what it is, but it's just not something until the past 10, 15 years we dealt with a lot.
This is helpful. I went to law school in DC and lived there for like 7 years. So there are a lot of buildings like this where the units are individually owned, but then frequently those folks that own an individual unit rent it out. So I'd have classmates that'd say like, oh, come to my condo that I rent. I'm like, no, you live in an apartment. You're trying to sound fancy, and it's not fancy. You're paying rent like the rest of us.
Well, I was also gonna say, so that's the general condo. And then sometimes in North Carolina, you see a land lease condo where the condo association doesn't even own the real property it's built on. It's got like a 100-year lease with options for 25-year renewals. And so that's like even another step removed from owning actual land. It's still real property. It still has value. I'm not trying to demean it. I'm just trying to define it. It's not, you just don't own dirt. So you can own a land lease condo, and so you own the air in unit 1A in a building that you don't technically own on land that you don't technically own. And so you can get really, really far removed from just owning your 10 acres, out in the country. But condos, of course, are extremely valuable, and they're usually condos. They usually are condos because that's the best use of the land. So you got an acre in downtown Raleigh, so you put a 20-acre building on it, so a lot of different people can live there and be close to work, and that's what makes them valuable. But I don't think a lot of people actually stop and think, that how it's created, what you're actually buying. But if you're a dirt lawyer, if you practice real property, especially in North Carolina, where this is kind of a newer thing that we've seen in the past 15, 25 years, I guess. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting. What interests me though,
dirt law is the way of the past. It's all about air law.
It's different. But man, those things are popular, and they're always in very popular areas, so people who build and create condos, they don't usually have a problem moving those things.
Outlaw Lawyer, we are getting into listener questions. And again, this one, interesting. What is a condo? How is it created? And we have an opportunity for you to get in touch with Whitaker and Hamer. If you have any legal questions you are facing and you haven't been able to get answers, you can always call 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186, and leave your contact information, briefly what that call is about. And an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. Also, you can email your questions to the program, questions@theoutlawlawyer.com. We also want you to check out the website, Outlaw Lawyer. That's theoutlawlawyer.com. We're going to take a short break and be back on the other side. Our next listener question: I hired a contractor and I paid a deposit, and I want to go ahead and sue them for breach of contract because they didn't show back up. That's all coming up next on The Outlaw Lawyer.